The Podcast Super Friends. 5 podcast pros talking tech, promotion, marketing, ideas, and strategy.
Hello and welcome to the February episode of the Podcast Super Friends. Very excited for today's guest, but before we introduce him, we will go around the room and introduce the Podcast Super Friends in attendance. I am John Gay from Jag Podcast Productions, located outside Detroit, Michigan. Over to Texas.
Hi, I'm Johnny Podcast, located on the internet.
Also on the internet, but I'm Catherine O'Brien, and I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Matt Kundle, the Sound Off Media Company, Saint Adèle, Quebec, Canada.
Beautiful.
So full disclosure to our audience, we, the 5 of us, David Yaz from Boston is not here yet. Not sure if he's joining us today, but the 5 of us have an offline call once a month. We help each other solve client issues and kind of run ideas by each other. And one of the things that comes up every month is, who should we have this month on the show? And Steve Stewart's name came up. Steve, I am not hesitant to say, has been a bit of a mentor to me in this space. He is in charge of the Podcast Editors Academy, which is a group of thousands and thousands of podcast editors on Facebook. He is also affiliated and in charge of the Podcast Editor Academy, which is a membership organization. We're going to get to all of that as well. And there was one podcast movement, Steve, was it Denver, where you must have felt like I was stalking to you because I ran into you like 15 times in the span of like 48 hours. Like saw you on the bus, then I saw you in the lobby. I promise, Steve, I'm not. We're just kind of hanging out.
Well, I can only hope for stuff like that to happen.
So one of the questions that we get a lot of times from our viewers, listeners, podcast consumers, if you will, is, how do I do what the 5 of you do? How do I get involved in producing and editing podcasts? So that's kind of where I want to start with you, Steve. How did you get into this space? Because you were in it before any of us were, as far as I know.
Oh, was I? I don't know. Maybe.
When did you get into it?
Well, officially paid for doing stuff like this was 2016. I'd started my own show in 2010 and already had known how to use digital recording and editing software. Not really well, but I was able to create my own show and put it out. And I was involved with a community called FinCon, it started as the Financial Blogger Conference, but then grew into a larger media type of group. Now we're talking about podcasting and YouTube and all that stuff there as well. And I was always encouraging people to start a podcast. And a couple of well-known bloggers wanted to get together in 2015. They were talking, saying, hey, we should do this. They had never pulled the trigger. And so they called me up because they knew I was trying to help everybody. And by the end of the call, they're like, Steve, we just want to hit record. Will you do the rest? I'm like, sure, but I got to charge you for it.
Yeah.
So I was making minimum wage probably for the first couple of months there. But when other people in this community heard that I was editing for these 2 well-known people in our community, they're like, hey, we don't like editing either. And within 6 months, it grew into a full-time career. I wasn't really that profitable over the old day job, but that's the 3-year rule that came into play after that. But that's how I got into it. I don't know. How about you guys?
Well, you were in St. Louis when I first met you. You're in Colorado now. Were you in St. Louis when you started everything out?
Yes. Yep. St. Louis. And I was starting my own show on the road because I had a job that was keeping me on the road a lot. So I'd record my show in the hotel room. And so I was able to just casually edit and learn how to use all the digital stuff.
What were the first tools you were using?
The first thing I had was this horrible headset, which put the microphone right in front of your mouth and picked up all the mouth noises. And this is before anything like Isotope RX existed with the mouth declick. So that was horrible. And then I just used Audacity to record. And then I upgraded the microphone to, it was probably the ATR 2100 back then. And that helped it get a little bit better. And it was still using Audacity.
That microphone, it was a great microphone.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the, audio engineering side, like you mentioned Isotope, were you self-taught, or because I know there are programs out there like Full Sail University, things like that. I personally am completely self-taught, and then the occasional YouTube video. Was it just trial and error for you?
Yeah, hopefully this is encouraging to everybody out there. I was self-taught. I just did it myself and was learning from, some of it was YouTube videos, but then when I launched the Podcast Editors Club, which Jag was talking about earlier, the Facebook group, I learned from other people about other tools that were out there. And now with AI, I mean, there's so many magical tools out there that you can use that every situation that's thrown at me, almost every situation, I can come up with some kind of usable content. But I had one client one time send me this recording. It was with somebody who was big in their field, and I could not figure out, I just had the audio. I could not figure out why this audio was so horrible. And I tried every tool at my disposal, AI stuff, RX, all these things. Couldn't make it work. I went to the original recording, which had video, and found out that the guest was on his laptop, no microphone, no headphones, of course, and behind him was a men's urinal.
No.
I kid you not. And I messaged my client. I'm like, are you sure? I cannot make this any better. And they had a video editor doing the video version. I'm like, you sure you want this to go out there? I'm like, yes.
In public.
Yeah, they must have like cropped the video or something, because I mean, it was just off to the side a little bit, but oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed.
Wherever the conversation flows, right?
Exactly.
Steve,
you've been on
Go ahead,
both
Catherine, sorry.
sides. I'm sorry. You've been on both sides. You were a creator, and then you have now are an editor and mentoring other editors. Can you talk a little bit about making that transition? Because I've heard you in the past say that it was like just like a blessing in disguise, that the editing was really where it was at for you. So can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe also just touch on that there's a lot of ways that people can get involved in podcasting without necessarily being the host.
Right. There's so many things now that people can do in the background or the other side of the microphone. For me, I had just retired the podcast that I'd started in 2010 before I talked to these well-known bloggers and started editing for them. I was actually planning on launching a new show. And the timing went really well. But I was trying to grow a financial coaching business. I was in the financial blogging space. I had a blog about personal finance, and I wanted to be a financial coach full time. I was building all that when I was at the day job. And then, the editing thing came up. I'm like, well, I want to be a financial coach. I don't want to be an editor. This is just a side hustle. That's the way I treated it at first. It's like, this is just a side hustle. It's just good money on the side. And I was in a mastermind group, and after a couple of months, like, Steve, you're always talking about the editing part. You're talking about how you love this part. Drop the financial coaching thing and go full time with the editing thing. And I was convinced at that moment. I'm like, you're right. Okay. So I did. I just jumped in full steam ahead and haven't looked back, and I love it.
Steve, you say you've used the word podcast editor a lot, and I think that term, much like the word podcasting, has sort of evolved and sort of become this all-encompassing thing. If let's say I have a podcast, I've hired you to work on my show, what are you exactly providing? Because your original client said, we just want to hit record and you take care of the rest. That doesn't mean you're not just doing the cut and drag editing, right? You're probably providing the full suite of services. Can you just talk a little bit more about what that is?
Right. I think I hear the question behind the question, which is, what is a podcast editor versus producer versus manager versus director versus all those things? And you're right. Podcast editor can encompass quite a few different tasks. Back then I really didn't call myself a podcast editor. I was just editing the show for them. And I was doing the show notes too, which I hated. I hated doing my own show notes, and I did not like doing theirs either, but they wanted me to do it. So I'm like, yeah, okay. And this is before AI was around to help and all that stuff. So, podcast editing, if you want to go as the strictest term, is really more like the cutting, the arranging, the moving, things like that. Whereas if you're going to be doing more than that, if you're going to be making content decisions, you could be a content editor. If you're going to be involved with the production on any site, like you're helping your client, maybe you're doing the remote recording. Jag, you did this. I think you're still doing this quite a bit. Getting there, coaching the guests through, getting their mic set up. That's a producer role. A manager role would be something that would probably encompass the same thing, but they might also be contacting the guest and trying to set it all up, or they're trying to get the website together and put the show notes on the web and all the stuff that's included in that. Whereas again, you go back to the strictest term of a podcast editor, it doesn't include all those things. It's just editing the content. But because it's podcast editor, not audio editor or video editor, it does encompass more things. And of course we do audio engineering and stuff like that as well. Although I wouldn't classify myself as an audio editor because I use AI for a lot of the stuff.
I wouldn't call myself an engineer either.
Yeah.
One of the things you're kind of segueing into this that I wanted to ask you about, Steve, is every year, and I want to come back to the Facebook group too, but every year within the Podcast Editors Club on Facebook, you put out a survey, and it kind of gives the lay of the land as far as what people are charging, what services they're offering. This kind of dovetails off Johnny's question just a minute ago. What were some of your key takeaways? I'm putting you on the spot here, but what were some of your key takeaways from the most recent podcast editors survey? What was some of the stuff that you found?
We didn't do one in 2025, so I'll go
Okay.
off the one we did in 2024. But there was something that came out in the data that I don't think a lot of people would see as apparent. There's my business partner at the Podcast Editor Academy, Mark Deal. He can do a lot of that regression testing and stuff. So he'll
Mark
kind of
loves those. What are they?
Oh.
Scatter charts, spray charts? What are they called?
yeah, it's whatever you want to call it. I don't know. He's the math nerd when it comes to Excel and stuff like that. Fantastic stuff. But there was one thing that showed that. So based on what editors charge, if they have this additional skill, they can charge more for the editing piece. That's one of the things we do. And one of those things was media host management. That's not technically an editing job, but if you do coaching or if you do, social media, stuff like that, you might be able to charge more just for your editing piece. And the reason why I think the media host part came up as a higher rate this year or this in 2024 than previous years is because a lot of these media hosts now, you have the consumer side dynamic insertion tools. You got Captivate, you got Buzzsprout where you can insert mid-rolls, where before it used to be agencies, you'd have to work with agencies and they'd put you on Megaphone or something like that. Now podcasters can do it themselves. RSS.com now I think does dynamic insertion. So when you have the ability to provide those services along with the editing and the post-production stuff like that, you could charge more. And I think that was the most surprising piece of data that I found from that survey.
So you're saying charge more, not just per edit, but you're saying charge more because you're adding in all these ancillary services on top of the actual edit?
It's kind of both.
Okay.
I'm more valuable as a podcast editor because I know how to do this. So I might not be doing it for all my clients. In fact, only maybe about a third of my clients do I do anything with dynamic insertion. But the other ones are going to be charged what I charge because I am more valuable to the media than, the podcast editor who just edits.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
How did the Podcast Editors Club on Facebook come into being, and how many thousand are you up to now?
We've got over 9,700 members, I think it is right now. It started on January 12th of 2017. Wow. Shortly after my birthday, I was sitting there thinking, there is no Facebook group just for editing or post-production. It's all these podcasting groups. And I don't need to talk about microphones and mixers. I don't need to hear people talking about how to get guests or grow their audience. This is all stuff that's been answered before. Nobody's talking about this post-production piece. And it's really important. Got to make our shows sound better. So I created the group, and then I invited Mark Deal to be the first member, and then it grew from there.
Steve, I have kind of a double question. So with the Podcast Editors Academy, I'm sure you just have years of just data and insight and alumni that have just given you such incredible feedback on their experience. Like maybe this is a 3-part question. I'll try.
Let me write this down.
Okay. When people are starting to come into the Podcast Editor Academy, is it total newbies or do they have some kind of experience doing this? Or is it a mixed bag? And then from there, the people who are starting, what is the biggest kind of hurdle that they have to overcome in order to get to this point where they're doing this full time? Is it a skill? Is it learning a certain type of software? And then the final part of the question would be people in our, arena, the 5 of us sitting here, people who are doing this full time and wanting to learn and continue to get better. What would you recommend people in this position focus on?
Did you get all that, Steve?
What's that?
Did you get all that? Did you get all 3 parts?
I think so. Johnny, you were asking about the academy. Do you mean the academy or the community and the club?
The academy, the people that are paying to learn this.
Yeah, they are not necessarily beginners. They've been doing, they might be like I was, where they've got some skills, but they haven't charged people for it. So that might be because we do offer a lot of, I'll say, business advice. We'll even get as far into, like income taxes for people in the United States and stuff like that. But they do have some kind of already, they got a base for it already.
Okay.
And their biggest challenges is not the editing. It's always getting clients, making sale, raising rates, things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's answer number 1. What were the other 2 questions I've already found?
You answered 2 of them. The last one would be for people that, for the 5 of us, we have established businesses as podcast producers, editors, etc. What do you recommend, at least from like a skill toolbox standpoint, what do you think we should be focusing on the most?
Well, I think it's going to be efficiency,
Okay.
profitability. Profitability comes from efficiency. So you find those processes at work, you find ways to outsource what you don't want to do, make it effective for you. That's really the big thing. And then, with the Academy, we've got office hours once a month. So we've got the ability to mastermind some things together as well. So if somebody has a problem, they could bring it to an office hours and maybe closed door type of discussion. And a lot of times I'll show my numbers, or I'll give stories that I wouldn't necessarily want to share outside of the office hours. But yeah, I think for somebody who's first starting out trying to make this a business, my biggest challenge was making more money per hour, just making that hourly rate go up. And I don't charge my clients per hour. That's ridiculous. I charge them per episode, or I give them a flat rate for the month. Now I've got to be able to get more work done in those hours that I have available to me.
That's a
And
really good
Jag,
point.
Jag, you said Steve was your mentor. He just said outsourcing. I've been telling Jag to outsource for like 5 years.
I was just gonna say that Johnny and Matt especially have been like, you got to outsource the editing so you can focus on the bigger picture stuff.
Don't even
And
outsource the things that you don't want to do. Like it's so true. And I think, like you said, Steve, especially with the introduction of AI, the stuff that used to take me a week to do can be done in 24 hours. Like the turnaround is just so much faster. And the more that you're able to do at a really high level, a really high quality product that's going out every single time, that extra time that can be spent bringing in more clients, increasing your rate. And it's just, if you're not using AI at this point for any part of your podcast production business, you're severely lacking. So I'm glad you hit on the efficiency piece.
Yeah.
Steve, I've got a question about AI.
Sure, man.
We all use it in one form or another, but is there any part of AI that is just too much, where it's like, I'm going to put that tool away and I'm just going to go back to editing this part by hand? And I think specifically of one example, the removal of ums and nos and likes from tools like Descript and other things like that can hinder the process. It's almost like it can add time to the workflow.
Yeah, that's actually the answer right there, is using something to take out the filler words, and then you got to go back and fix the bad edits. Sometimes it's faster. I've found that if I use let me start with this way. I found with certain clients, I can use a certain tool. So this person has a distinct crutch where they end every sentence with right. Okay, that's an easy edit for AI. But when they're, liking, the ums and ahs all throughout what they're saying, that's a little bit more difficult. And that's where I'm going to keep it to myself and do it manually. And I think that's something that my clients appreciate, because they know that the product is always going to turn out to be what they were expecting. It's not getting out every or ah. They're getting a good product that's not going to become annoying because every like is still like in the recording, like.
And you want to shoot for a lot of those. You would like to ideally shoot for 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 on those crutch words. But something that we talk about all the time too is this still has to sound like a natural conversation, and normal human conversations have filler words, have crutch words. And what's so beautiful about podcasting is when, from the consumer standpoint, is you feel like in the best podcast, you're just sitting at a table listening to a couple people, your favorite people, having a conversation, and the occasional will slip in there in those episodes.
Yeah, and pacing is extremely important. And pacing is not, like you think about a pace when you're running and jogging. No. We're talking about just keeping it so that it sounds more natural. I'll do a process that I've got a client who she'll take 5-second, gaps like that when she's speaking, because she's thinking about the words. I don't know why she doesn't want to mess up, because she can mess up and I'm going to edit it.
She's got you.
She's got me, but she still does this. And so I'll run a process where I'll take everything that's over a second long and I'll trim it to like half a second. And then I'll go through and do the detailed edit, and I'll make it maybe a little bit shorter if it feels like it. I might even make it a little bit longer if it needs it. And that's with her monologues. And you might have some guests too, where they change their pace, and you just kind of leave that gap there because they're kind of meandering through their thoughts and bringing up the conversation, and it's meaningful and it's emotional. So yeah, pacing I think is almost as important as, just not trying to get every filler word out, because we use filler words. I use filler words all the time. You'll hear me say and I'll start sentences with so every single time.
From a business standpoint, I think one of the biggest questions that probably happens in the Facebook group or, people that you're privately talking to about this, especially exclusively Americans, is a potential client comes to you, interviews you, whatever, and they ask you, why can't I just hire somebody in the Philippines to do this for $5? What is your response when people either ask you that question or in your actual business when you're talking to clients? Has that ever happened?
They've not actually asked me because, again, I'm kind of in a tight-knit group. A lot of my clients come from recommendations. Somebody wants to go with somebody in the Philippines, and they're using that as an
That's
excuse.
a catch-all term for global marketplace.
Yeah, somebody overseas because they're less expensive. I know a lot of people from quote unquote the Philippines who are fantastic editors. They do better than me on some projects. So I'm not going to say no, and it's going to cost them less. Absolutely. The way that probably the most important piece of business, at least for somebody like me who's on the post-production side, is not how good of an editor I am. I've got people going to edit circles around me. It's the customer service piece. It's how well you treat people. It's how you communicate. You don't communicate too much, but you communicate enough so that they know, hey, I got the file. Hey, it's going to be done by tomorrow. Hey, it's uploaded. Hey, you're scheduled. Hey, everything's good to go. I took care of the rest, whatever. The customer service piece is just, it's mandatory that you do excellent customer service. And then you're going to be able to raise your rates and keep clients for longer than just, a 6-month trial.
Steve, you're in a niche. You were talking about coming from FinCon and from the financial blogging world. And I think that if not all of your clients, a majority of them are financial talkers. That's the do you find that being in that niche, does that also help what you're talking about here with Johnny, where you have a reputation? Can you talk a little bit more about that and just maybe for some people who are carving out their niche or are scared to be in a niche, any thoughts on those lines?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the riches are in the niches. That phrase is so true. I would not be where I am if it wasn't for this FinCon community. And really, it's because there's a lot of technical terms in the financial world.
Sure.
I mean, if somebody's talking about a mega backdoor Roth, okay, does that sound kind of dirty to y'all? But it's actually a term. It's actually a term. It's not in the IRS code, but it's a term people use for a strategic way to move money from one retirement account to another. I know what that is. I know what it means. And I've heard people, I actually had to do this a couple months ago in a roundtable recording for one of my shows. A guest said something that was absolutely false and could not be aired. And I messaged that person because I knew who they were. I said, look, you said this. I'm taking it out just so you know.
Wrongo.
You said this, but really I know what you meant. You meant this, but you said this, so I have to take it out. And I told the host as well, and they're cool with it. So had that gotten out, would somebody get in trouble? Probably not. But it didn't need to be out there because it was absolutely false.
But that just, you have the knowledge and the experience to be an extra layer of protection for your client, which is outstanding.
Right.
Particularly in the financial space, and Steve and I share a little bit of that in common. I've co-hosted shows with financial advisors for a while, and you get a sense for what compliance will or will not allow. And it's different, depending on if you're with Raymond James or Edward Jones or whoever you're with. But knowing, hey, let's come back to that. And I think for our listeners, I'll be curious for your take on this as well, Steve. I've got a clause in contracts that says, I forget the exact phrasing, but it's something along the lines of, I reserve the right to remove any material that is inflammatory or libelous or slanderous. I have the final say, but I will discuss with the client prior to making that edit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't have anything in my contract like that. I'm going to let them make the final decision, but if I do find something, I'm going to let them know. And that, of course, then they get to make the decision. Of course, we have the problem is is there going to be a delay in getting the answer, and that's going to hold back the episode from going live on the day they want? There's always that. But yeah, that extra layer of knowledge, definitely, again, riches are in the niches. My niche is that personal finance, where other people may have a niche or a niche that has nothing to do with the actual content, but more in the ability to do this thing. If you have somebody who's booking guests, if they're really great at communicating, heck, that person's a lot more valuable than just using, Haro or whatever services out there to try and find guests.
Well, I think that we just as podcast producers, this is sort of wisdom that we hear a lot in the podcasting world, which is a lot of people incorrectly think that if I am going to hit a wider audience, that will lead to me being more successful. And of course, we all know that a podcast for everybody is actually a podcast for nobody. And so I know that still remains an issue where a lot of people feel a fear about defining their niche and going for it and really niching into the niche, really, really going for it. So this is really, it's always nice to sort of have this conversation for people, especially if they're thinking about getting going in podcasting.
I'm going to come back to the Podcast Editor Academy for a second. Just as I logged into my account here, and I'm not on the take from Steve. I'm not getting any kind of commission or anything like that. But for those who aren't familiar with it, I'm looking at my dashboard right now in courses. There's a course on podcast chapters, ask a video editor, social media strategies, certain hosts and tips there, cost and ROI of YouTube videos, YouTube thumbnail testing, to Steve's point about taxes for US-based editors going legit with an LLC or an S Corp, and then office hours as well. I think there really is a lot to be offered in the Academy that's very resource specific as you kind of get into the space. So kudos to you and Mark, Steve, because you've done a great job with it.
Thanks. I enjoy it. So a lot of those courses I make because I need to know the answers. That whole podcast chapters, the ultimate podcast chapters guide, I needed to know. Because I was like, okay, when I put parentheses around the timestamps in the show notes, does that do anything? And I find out who, which apps it does it for or not. And then for the ones that read MP3s or the RSS, all that stuff had to be something that I just went through myself. I was like, well, I can't just keep this information myself. I need to share it with the Academy.
You can't just have James Cridland on speed dial to answer all these tech questions.
Wouldn't that be great?
The red phone, you pick it up and you get the answer.
No, so I asked Daniel J. Lewis instead.
Fair enough.
He's the red phone. Yeah, he's totally the red phone.
I had a question and sort of a comment as well, that for people who think, well, I don't really need an editor, I can edit it myself with some of the tools that are out there. And they're like, yes, fine. But I find that a lot of people will come back to me and say, it doesn't quite sound the way I want. And what they're really asking for is, can you make this sound like other podcasts? Minus 16 to minus 14 LUFS, add some compression. And so how do you explain to people exactly what compression is? And then also, how do you get good at putting compression into a podcast, into the final product?
Oh, like I said, I am not an audio engineer. Yeah, I've got tools that'll help me with that. So compression, you've got compression and normalization, which a lot of people get confused, and I'm not going to be able to describe the differences here, but the bottom line is we need to get everybody at the same volume level, and we don't want the dynamics to be so great that you've got people who are really quiet for one moment and then all of a sudden they're really loud, so the compression kind of helps with that to keep it all kind of steady, although you want the dynamics there as well. There's times when people just need to get a little more personal into the microphone and they're like, hey, check this out, or I'm just trying to come up with some kind of example here for the audience, but that the compression will help to get those closer together. And it's most important when you have more than one voice, which is almost always, but even more important when you're using some kind of a dynamic insertion tool, whether it's Libsyn ads and, just say, hey, throw an ad in here and it's going to be produced by, Airtable themselves. If yours is really quiet and theirs is really loud, you've got a problem. So using compression, getting the right volume or LUFS is really important because you want it to match those as well. I've got a client who every once in a while, let me walk through this process. I'll edit 90 minutes of audio. It's multi-segmented. I get like 6 different recordings and I piece it all together and I upload it to their Descript account, and they will go through it then, and they will then trim out the fat. They'll trim out the pieces that thought, well, that might be too blue and we don't want that getting out there, or this got a little boring, and then they'll export it out and put it up into their media host. For some reason, every once in a while, I'm sending it to them left to the right levels. And so for some reason, their export will be quieter. And then it goes up to their media host and the ads get inserted And people, they'll ping them. Hey, your ads are too loud. Well, it's not the ads are too loud, it's that their audio is too quiet. So it's really important because the listening experience is just ruined when all of a sudden you got this ping, this Sunday,
If
big
you're in
game.
the car especially, yeah.
Yes.
And by the way, for listeners right now who want to know exactly what Steve is talking about with the ads coming in, it's going to be right now.
And it was the exact same level as the audio that
Perfect.
you just heard.
Wasn't that flawless? Great segging of the break prior to that ad, Matt.
All right.
Set me up. I love it.
Professional.
So there's a bit of a cliche in among podcast editors. I think it's been in the Facebook group, it's been in this group as well. And they say, "What software do you edit on?" And the best answer is the one that you learned on, and the one you're most comfortable.
The one
on.
you like.
I know Johnny uses Logic. I know I use Adobe. And Steve, I got to say, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you still use Audacity, correct?
I started using Audacity the year it came out.
Okay, so you are an OG with Audacity.
Yeah, so it was what I knew, so I just kept using it before
and I
podcasting existed.
Exactly. And I don't like Audacity because I learned on Adobe. So my brain thinks the way Adobe's ecosystem works. But you have plugins, you are like the Audacity wizard as far as I'm concerned. You know how to make that thing sing.
Yes, hotkeys, programming your own keyboard shortcuts. I mean, that is the one thing that I started doing early on that saved me time, because there's something about keeping your hand on the mouse and using your left hand on the keyboard and your eyes are still on the screen.
Yes.
Where when you're going to make an edit, you don't lose any time. It's select, I'm still looking at it with my hand moving the mouse, and then hit the keyboard for D for delete or whatever, and it's done, and I move on to the next one. So keyboard shortcuts right there. I also have macros built for certain functions. Like I have a show, they like to get blue sometimes, and they want me to bleep out the explicit words because it's funny and it keeps the show clean. Well, for me to copy a little bit of audio that's a beep and paste it in, that's a lot of work. So I create a macro and it just creates this tone that's beep, and then I just hit this one key, X, because X marks the spot, and it turns whatever I selected into this beep tone.
X-rated.
So those things are just shortcuts that make it. Yeah.
And also, once you learn your hotkeys, it's very difficult to get away from that because I'm using Twisted Wave.
Oh my.
Okay.
Oh my is right. And I started using that in 2015. I actually learned to edit on it. And
I've never even heard of Twisted
Yeah,
I
Wave.
have
me
the
neither.
app on my phone. I've used it on my phone, but never on a computer.
That's what Chris Curran used. Chris Curran from the podcast engineering show.
I also had, I think one of your people, Steve, a few weeks ago, I think it was Brian Ensminger, who
Brian.
also said that he used Twisted Wave. So I found the other person in the world who was using it. I still use it to this day.
Two active users.
I love the hotkeys, and they just moved to a subscription platform. But I got into it because of voiceover really more than anything. I didn't really need it for mixing and mastering and a bunch of other stuff. But it came with all these stacks that really could affect and change my voice. Make it sound crisper, and then we could add in some of the other tools that we've already talked about today, including Isotope. So it's tough to walk away from something that works.
The good and bad of keyboard shortcuts. So I'll hold up to the camera those on a video. So I have this gaming mouse that's got 12 buttons on the side of it, and so I have and Steve, is that the Razer one, the
Same thing.
Infinity?
I was going to ask what mic you use. If you use the one with the big ball in the middle, where you people can
No.
quick.
Jag will not allow me to use the Blue Yeti.
Oh,
I forgot
the
what
Blue
this
Yeti.
one
We
is.
all agree on the Blue Yeti.
Brown.
So I
That's
have
where everyone starts.
the keyboard shortcuts that were on the right hand side of my keyboard. I'm right-handed. They are now on my mouse, and the left hand side of the keyboard is now my left hand as I'm editing. But you can get burned by this, especially those of you using Adobe, because Adobe just upgraded their Audition, and the fade in and fade out is not as easily found. It's multiple commands now. It's hard to do a keyboard shortcut for it, as well as a 6, 10, and 30 decibel cut, which, I'm trying to hold on to the previous version of Audition as long as I possibly can, because I got to refigure out how to work around to get those keyboard shortcuts in the new version. So if you if you have a software that updates pretty frequently, it can burn you with your keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, and Adobe Audition is the number one DAW of audio podcast editors by far. 3x usually when we do the surveys.
Is it really?
Always been 3x from the next one, which was either Audacity or Reaper. Recently, Pro Tools kind of hopped up there in the surveys. I don't know why that suddenly got a resurgence, but
Pro Tools is like the advanced class for me. That's
Yes.
like if you're engineering a band in a studio.
I didn't realize I was alone on Logic Pro X Island.
that was like 6th or 7th
What?
in the survey.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm frozen again. I don't know what's going on with my camera.
It's Logic. Logic crashed.
No.
Damn it.
Ah, poor Johnny.
Yeah, well, Apple's now, I haven't looked into it deeply, but they've now got some kind of a subscription package.
Yeah,
where you
they
get all the tools.
They created a creator suite, which is, basically all of the Apple tools. I haven't upgraded to it because I only need Logic and Final Cut Pro. And what I loved about the Apple suite was you would just buy the product once outright and you now have it forever, versus the Adobe suite, which is a subscription. And so I have no reason to upgrade to it. However, Apple is certainly trying to get me there.
Everything's got to be a subscription.
Yeah.
Got to keep you paying.
Well, that's one of the nice things about Audacity is it's freeware. That's great, and they have a very active community. In fact, that was one of my questions I wrote down for you, Steve, because you are our defense every time anybody says who how could you possibly be using Audacity? I said, Steve Stewart uses Audacity. You are the you get the credit. You share your credibility with everybody because you use Audacity as well.
I'll carry the flag for you.
That's right. Well, and I do think that the community around Audacity is very helpful, that you can, if you have any problems, if most likely somebody else has had that problem before, or there's going to be some responsive people who can come in with an answer. So that's always extremely helpful too.
Have you tried Audacity 4.0 beta yet? Or alpha?
I have
guess
not.
it's alpha. It's not even beta yet. Yeah, it's way underdeveloped right now. I'm hoping it'll come out soon, but it looks kind of scary because they're changing a lot, and we'll see if I can bring my hotkeys over, it'll be great.
Otherwise, they've moved your cheese.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Steve, one of the big fun toys that podcast editors love are plugins. And I was just curious, what are some of your favorite plugins to use, whether that be AI tools or actual third-party plugin tools? Where do you find yours? What gets your ball rolling with plugins?
Well, because I'm using Audacity and I keep throwing money at Isotope for RX, I pretty much stick with those two. I keep hearing other people talk about Clarity something. I forget what it's called.
Clarity Revive or Clarity Pro. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some really good ones out there that I just haven't gone to use yet because I haven't found the need, and I don't want to. I'm a creature of habit, just like everybody else here. I don't want to change. But when it comes to AI, I mean, there's a new tool every week, and occasionally I'll try this one and I'll be like, yeah, that fits what I'm trying to do. And I'm always looking for the ones that are either offering, hey, pay us this flat right now and you keep it forever, even though I might not get the upgrade in 2 years, or it's free or something like that. I'm always trying something. Like a lot of them are transcription actual software. It's amazing how much, as a podcast editor, I use transcriptions, and it has nothing to do with ADA compliance or putting it out there for people to read. It's all just for me to search and find in the transcript something that I'm looking for. Like this one show I have, they have a guy who does the introduction, he does the trivia, and he does the outro. And these are all short little bits that include music. So I cut those pieces out by searching the transcript. I find where they are in the original recording, because it's an hour-long recording. And I'll find it, I'll clip that out and I'll put it over the side, and then I'll get the big chunks of the thing done. And then I'll make these musical, the introduction and stuff like that, just because I found it in the transcript.
Transcripts for interludes. I love it.
Yeah. And some of these AI tools, I mean, they're so fast. I've got this one called Mac Whisper. It'll do a 60-minute piece of audio in like 2.5 minutes. I'll get the full transcript with names and everything. It's unbelievable. I don't care. Again, I'm not putting it out there.
Yeah.
It's just for editing purposes. Okay.
It's just for me to find. It's for me to find where they say, take that out, Steve.
Yeah.
Because they said something they needed me to take out, or all those types of things.
Yeah,
It makes it
you're just control effing the word Steve and jumping to everyone. That's what I tell the people that I work with too. I say, if you want something cut out, you say, Johnny, cut that. And I just, control F Johnny. There it is. Because they're not going to call me out during the episode.
Right,
Related to that, so in terms of transcripts, and I may be on an island in the group here, but anybody could chime in. For rough transcription, just script, Riverside, a lot of them are good enough. They're 80, 90-ish% accurate, I'd say. I've actually started using a human-based overseas transcription service of English speakers for clients that want a transcript of their podcast. Once I finish the edit, I send it to the service and Google Drive, usually 24-hour turnaround. They charge me $1 a minute, which is a little bit pricier than some of the AI services. But to me, it's worth it to have something that's 97% accurate so I can scan a 20-page document for an hour podcast, fix a few words here and there, and be good to go. Any thoughts on that from the group?
I've been using a human for like the entire time I've been doing this, like 7 years. I've been using the same girl, and she's just incredible. Like it was when you brought up transcription, Steve, it popped off in my mind, so I'm glad you brought it up, Jack, is how much clients love having the transcript. I have people putting every transcript of their episode into an LLM and using it for company training. I have people using transcripts for their websites. They're so valuable, and taking that extra step by having an actual person basically proofreading the entire thing, making sure, the company name is spelled correctly. Or Matt has a great joke about, is it Pansy becoming Nazi?
Oh, the time that we had
Nancy,
Patsy on
right?
the show and Patsy got called Nazi.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
What? Ooh.
Yeah, we had a guest
Terrible.
named Patsy, and the transcription. This was early transcription days. Called it Nazi, and then we got
my.
flagged. Yeah.
poor
It's
thing.
just it's so valuable to have, and similar to the being able to do audio ad insertions, it's an extra step in your business to be like, oh, by the way, you are getting a fully proofread by a human transcript that is spelled, all of your names will be spelled correctly, everything is grammatically correct, delivered alongside with every other deliverable that you're getting.
It's funny. It's one of those things that I don't think that until you're podcasting, you realize how much those things are valuable. Like my joke to people is, you don't know how many pictures go into podcasting. Do you know how many images you need to make a successful podcast? And it's kind of the same thing. There's so many written assets, the transcript, all these pieces to make the podcast be what it can be.
Yeah, I think every day about how much I reach for a tool. In my case, it's Otter. And what I like about Otter is that it learns my guess, the voice. It becomes trained on it and fixated to know the companies, to know where they work. And the first there's a podcast we have called Humans on Rights, and there is a land acknowledgement at the beginning of it, and the spelling every week for the first 10 weeks I had to go in and edit it, and on week 11 it figured it out, and now we're up to episode 100 and something, and I don't have to touch it. So I love how the AI will learn about each particular show as it goes along.
Yeah, I've got a tool called Whisper Transcribe that does that. It'll allow you to put in keywords or word spellings that you can save, and then the next time you upload it to, and you can do folders for each show. So if I upload Rish to this one, it knows to spell this person's name this way, and it fixes it right off the bat.
Is Whisper Transcribe related to ChatGPT, or am I thinking of something else, Steve?
I think you're thinking of something else. It's a standalone app for Mac. I don't know if it's for Windows.
Okay.
I got it on a special deal where it's one-time purchase, and it's just been fantastic. Fantastic tool for getting transcripts and being able to create.
You're not
those
getting
titles.
charged for minutes. It's just you bought it and now you get it.
You get a certain quota per month, and
Okay.
they do have a subscription model where you get that same thing. It's like the script. It's every month, or maybe they've changed their service slightly, but number of minutes you buy, and then you upload that number of minutes per month. It'll give you the option to do titles and summaries and quotes and stuff like that.
I don't think Descript goes 24 hours without some kind of update. Every time you close out of Descript, you just use the outdated version of Descript. There's always a
And
new
God
version
help
to
you if you
use.
update while you're in the middle of something. Forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, you established before, you've been in the industry for a long time. And we're talking about these AI tools and they're all fun, all those new things. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that are timeless about podcasting that you've learned over the years, and maybe one thing that you're excited about, like all the newfangled things that are coming up?
Excited about. I'll have to come back to that one later.
Okay.
But
I have a question in the meantime if you want to think about it.
well, Catherine asked first. I should answer hers. Yeah. You said the first part of your question was what again?
You've been in the industry for a long time, and so you've seen things come and go, and I'm hoping you could just share like sort of one good timeless piece of podcasting
Well,
wisdom.
the way to a successful show is connecting with the audience. I think we all know that. I think the people who are watching or listening to this know that. It's connecting with the audience. Got shows that have been around for, actually I have a show, the first show I ever worked on had its 10-year anniversary last week. And the reason why is she provides excellent content, and she's personable, where you feel like you can connect with her, and she is somebody you could connect with. Another show that's been around for 12 years, and I didn't start with them, but I was a big fan from the beginning, and then they just hired me and in my niche as well. And the reason why they have success, they're connecting with their audience. In fact, they're starting to have little pop-up meetup groups in certain cities now. So it's only taken 12 years to get there. But they're connecting with their audience, and that's a big deal. It's the reason why they can keep going after 12 years. You think you'd run out of things to say and do, but they're still going.
You're reminding me of a question here, Steve, which is, I'm sure you get this from new clients like the four of us do. What do you tell somebody when, they want to be making Joe Rogan money overnight in terms of if you build it, they will come? What do you tell somebody to assuage them of the idea that they're going to be overnight millionaires when they start their podcast?
Well, whenever I first talk with somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast, one of the first questions I ever ask is, what do you want to get from having a podcast? And they've got to have a selfish answer there. And once they come up with a selfish answer, because, I want to help people. Well, yeah, but you're gonna pod fade. You're gonna burn out. You're not gonna do it because you're not getting what you really want, which is some kind of impact and be able to continue this huge project. A podcast is not easy. So it usually comes down to, I do want to make some money in it as well. It might be a lead magnet for their business, things like that. Your question was...
what do you tell them when they say, I want to make it rich overnight?
Right. So then I tell them how long it's going to take. It's going to take 3 years.
Yeah.
And they've got to go the distance. And if they want to try it, I'll say, okay, you got to commit to a year. Whether they work with me or not, doesn't matter. They've got to commit to doing it for a year. I have one client who did that. He and his co-hosts are like, we're committed. We want to try this podcast thing out for 1 year. And about 6 months in, they got one client. And this one client who listened to the show, and it wasn't there wasn't like getting tons of downloads at the time. One client brought their entire portfolio over, and now they were making like $20,000 a year for managing their assets. So was that a good experiment? I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. You said you've been working on a show that's been going for 10 years. I'm sure your job 10 years ago looks a lot different than it does today. Where do you see the job of a podcast editor? What does that look like in 10 years?
For most people, being strictly a podcast editor is not going to work out as a career move. There's too many people who can do it. There's too many AI tools. People think they can do it themselves. They wouldn't pay the rate to be able to pay somebody like me a living wage. So you've got to be able to provide either, like I was saying, that excellent customer service, or more services that are valuable to the person. You want to get the busy person. You want somebody who's trying to do it as a business, not necessarily make money from the podcast, but make money because they have a podcast. It's feeding their brand. Jag, you know all about this part. It's got to be able to fill that brand and make the money over there. Otherwise, they're not going to pay you, because a lot of podcasts think they're going to make money on advertising, but $20 CPM, you do the math.
Yeah.
If you get 5,000 downloads, let's say it's $40 CPM. What is that? $200?
Right.
That's not a living wage.
That's unheard of. Yeah.
To make a podcast, podcasters they're barely breaking even. When you think about, you got the media hosts and whatever else they might be, renting the script to help with the post-production. They can't hire an editor for $200 a month. So, Yeah, it's tough. So a podcast editor, strictly an editor, probably not, but it's a skill that definitely needs to be learned by someone who wants to do that service for somebody else, saying that the person just wants to hit record and you do the rest type of thing.
Yeah, I mean that's what I sell to people is all you have to do is figure out who you want to talk to and what you want to talk about. I will take care of the rest. Video, audio, everything in between, upload management, social clips. You're getting the full bag plus the customer service. I don't even think today you could just strictly be an audio editor only and transition into that full time. I don't know that that would work.
You got to
for
be
someone
Liam Neeson.
starting
You
out.
got to have a very specific set of skills.
Yeah. Or have the ability to like that's your job, but you're outsourcing everything else. All of the other pieces of a podcast that come together are coming from you. You're just having other people do it.
I think an easy one for anybody who is just editing, I think a logical place to go is into the artwork. Because a lot of podcasts just don't have the right packaging for it. So
Yeah.
even after you produce the audio, what's the next thing you need? Well, Steve pointed out that he was doing show notes. Show notes are obviously very important. But to what Steve mentioned, we can get AI to do that now using the transcript and whatnot. The next logical place would be the artwork. And after that, it gets into, hosting. And then, where I started to take off was being able to manage dynamic audio insertion and being sort of a bit of a whisperer to sort of tell clients, here's what you can do. Here's how you can promote your business. We're going to use dynamic audio insertion in order to promote your website, your newsletter, and some of the other tools that you have around you. But yeah, I mean, to just be an editor, those were the days, as the song goes. And the dog is singing along in the background, whichever
Oh,
dog
my
that
wife
is.
just got home. Apologies.
Amazon
No, it's not a
delivery.
problem, Jag, with the dog. The dog now is part of the show, and we're going to have to get a SAG after credit for it.
Associate producer credit for.
And now's time for another ad. Oh, we lost
Well,
Jag.
here, yeah, I wasn't going to ask this question, but I'll take this opportunity to ask it. We're closing in here. You have been generous with your time with us. You've always been a person I know. You've been generous with your time with me in the past. You give a lot to the community that you're involved in. Can you talk a little bit about managing communities? And you've got all these editors. You've gave us the clarion call to interact with our audiences. Can you talk a little bit about managing communities and interacting with communities?
Just like I asked my clients, what do you want to get out of this? I should have asked my own question to that when I started the Facebook group and then the Academy. Well, the Academy, I understood what was going on because my business partner tricked me into doing it, but it was the right thing to do. I always say Mark Deal is the guy who makes me do things that are good for me. Managing communities, I mean, as far as like the Facebook group, we put parameters in place so that we don't get the people who just want to come in and spam the group. We keep that tight. I'm always in there because I like to be in there.
You're
Because
good
I'm-
about filtering stuff out that's not relevant to the conversation, Steve. You've actually, and I say this with love, you've dinged me a couple times. Like, hey, John, that's really not what we do here.
We're not
Take
talking
your,
about the Patriots.
Take your Blue Yeti tirade somewhere else.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's because it's a group I want to be in. I want to, and since I started it, I get to make the rules, but I want to make sure that it was also valuable to some other people. And I've had so many people say that the Facebook group is the only reason they go to the Facebook. They don't go because of anything else. They don't want to be on Facebook because the group is so specific and valuable to the post-production side that they come in and they check it out and, keep up to date through there, or they feel like they can ask questions.
You and Mark and whatever other moderators you're employing, I mean, you're pretty good too about avoiding the inevitable infighting that happens in the comments section on any topic. Sometimes when things get a little bit hairy, I think you guys are pretty good at reining that in.
Yeah, when somebody's insulting Audacity, I do it with a smile when they're, with my comebacks.
You're banned.
Yeah, but then there's things like just at Podfest. Now, I wasn't able to make it to Podfest this last year, but my business partner Mark Deal did, and we have this big backdrop that you can unfold and put up, and Podfest allowed us to set it up, and it says on the banner, #AskAnEditor, and all that is for people to be able to come up, and if they're an editor, they should be able to staff the booth. anytime they want, they can come up and they're the expert now because they're in front of this banner that says ask an editor and they're an editor. And then podcasters who are in the hallways can come up and ask any question. It's a great networking opportunity for everyone. And hopefully from that, we get some people who make some relationships that turn into, working relationships. And it's something that I love to do whenever we have the opportunity because it seems to be the right place for it. And who's getting hurt? Where's the harm in setting up a banner and just having conversations in a hallway?
The person that gets hurt is the crappy editor that host fired because he found somebody competent that can answer his question.
Yeah.
But
It's funny. It's funny you say that though, Steve, because that was going to be one of my big questions I think would be really valuable is a lot of how we get our clients is referrals. You do great work for one person, they introduce to other people. It's sort of a snowball effect. Outside of referrals, for a podcast editor or producer, how would you recommend the best way to go about getting more clients?
You're saying for the podcast editor to get more clients?
Yes.
Best way? Well, I personally love in-person meetups, in-person conferences. I think the in-person meeting is the best way to get that introduction, to get that relationship going. However, it's also the most expensive.
Yeah.
Money and time. I mean, just going to a conference I did the math and I posted it in I did an article in Pod News, posted it, but it was like $2,000 to go to Podfest in 2025.
Holy smokes.
And that's, airfare, rooms, food, things that a normal person would, things that a normal person would spend. Maybe I spend a little more. I don't know. Everybody's going to have a different airfare and hotel, but that's a big commitment. But when you're in a room with podcasters and they're at a conference for podcasting, who's more serious about podcasting than a person who's at a podcast conference?
Yeah.
So the serious person's at the conference, the serious service provider's there. It's instant credibility. And if you get to speak, that's even more credibility. So those in-person things are the best. Now, if you're going to do it on social media, it becomes a lot more difficult because again, that's the easy button. If anybody can do it, then everybody's going to do it. And it's hard to make that connection online unless you're just providing value left and right and you become seen as the expert. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But, everybody's talking about sliding into the DMs on Instagram and, you provide really good stuff on TikTok. If you can do it, do it. Do it.
I was on a podcast this week as a guest, and I think I said every client relationship that I've developed through like Twitter DMs has parted ways. So I have not found that to personally be the best way, but I love the idea of the in-person ones. Would you recommend people do because there's only so many podcasting events, and would you recommend people going to, like you're with FinCon, going to a conference of an industry that they're pretty focused on? Like a lot of the podcasts I work on are real estate, tech, investing, going to those conferences, and you might be the only podcast editor there. Granted, probably the very few people there are going to have podcasts, but that might clear out a lot of the potential competition by going and focusing on that industry conference.
Yeah. Big fish in a small pond. Absolutely. Go to an industry conference or a local meetup, be the one in the room who does that or of the few who do that. And as of course you can't be an introvert. You got to be out there, not obnoxiously, of course. You just got to be out there helping people. Again, that's why I like doing the Ask an Editor booth at conferences is it gives everybody the opportunity to be able to, safely start a conversation. It's not like you're pitching everything, but don't be an introvert. Go to local meetups. They're usually less expensive and you really do get to meet people over and over again. And those relationships build up. It's going to take time to get clients that way, but maybe they give a recommendation. Oh, you should go talk to Steve over there. He's really good at this, and he goes to my meetups and stuff like that. Great way to build your brand, even if you don't know the person who's eventually going to call you up. Oh, I heard about you from so-and-so. Of course, having a podcast.
You want people in the room who are going to speak your name when you're not in the room. What's the cliche? Something like that. Do you want people who are going to advocate for you when you're not even in the room? So you're saying it's this thought here is to maybe not necessarily be a fly on the wall at a podcasting conference, but be the podcasting person at a X conference of whatever industry
Dentist.
you're in.
Yeah. I'm already picturing Johnny's booth, ask a podcast producer at the next real estate, the Texas real estate.
Yeah, and then
conference he goes to.
7 people come up to me. Are you lost? Are you at the wrong?
You know they want a podcast.
Well, and as we wrap up here, and I'll go back to the community thing. I know one of the reasons I've enjoyed going to podcast movement over the years is running into the people in this virtual room. But then also, thanks to Steve's groups, there are probably 5 or 10 editors I can name off the top of my head that the minute I see them at this conference, Mark Deal's one, people like Virginia Elder, Jennifer Longworth, like there are so many. I don't want to leave anybody out, but you walk in and it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like you're meeting up with old friends, and there's that human connection piece that's in person and on a screen, which is awesome. So, Steve, thank you for all you do for the community. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, since we're talking about podcast editing, you got 2 places. You got the Podcast Editors Club on Facebook. If you just do a search for podcast editors, you'll find it, because it's really one of the only ones there. And then for the Academy, if you're interested, we just reopened the doors and are giving the biggest discount that we've ever given. It's at podcasteditoracademy.com.
Excellent. Steve, thanks so much.
Steve, by the way, I just got an email. I'm on your email list, and one just arrived a few minutes ago. So,
Really?
Yeah, so just sign up for that
Funnel
one
is
if you can too.
Yeah.
Who's in my email sending stuff out while I'm
Podcast Editors Club.
It was a correct outsource.
Okay.
Yeah.
Systems are working as planned.
Mark did it while Steve was in the call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go around the room, and we'll start up north.
Matt Kundle, St. Adele, Quebec, Canada. I am the owner of the Sound Off Media Company.
Big thanks to you, Steve, for being here. I'm Catherine O'Brien, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Come see me on Twitter. No one else seems to be there. Hello, Catherine O.
I'm Johnny from johnnypodcast.com. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. This was really, really awesome. Really appreciate you taking the time.
I'll echo that, Steve. Thank you so much. I'm John Gay from Jag Podcast Productions outside Detroit. You can find me at jagpodcastproductions.com. Thanks for joining us today, and go Pats.
Thanks for watching the podcast Super Friends. For more Super Friend wisdom, check out the show at soundoff.network. Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.